Well, sadly, I won't be able to make use of J Monster's services every single video I do because, of course, those intros do take a little bit of time, sadly enough. But even so, I hope you enjoyed the last video, and now we'll be getting on to business as usual, so to speak. And this map is kind of old school in a way because it is at least based on the same sort of principle as one of the old Medieval 2 standard siege maps. This is a fortress, of course, which is a two-layered fort. Obviously, it's in a Gondorian style, though, as you can see from the architecture. And this is a 3v5. Now, I could have actually done a Citadel with 8 players. It was initially only going to be a 6-player battle, but in the end it turned into an 8-player one because the lobby filled up pretty fast, and, well, that's just the way it went. So this is going to be a 3v5, and of course there are 3 defenders and 5 attackers. Let's go through the attacking armies first of all, because they are outside the gates. Now, over here we have, playing as Harad, oh my god, this is the one that I was dreading trying to pronounce, Sereg Belikov. I hope I'm saying that right. But yes, he is playing as Harad, and he's gone, despite all 5 of the attacking armies having significantly less money, they do still have a significant numbers advantage. As you can see, the balance of power is relatively even as it stands, and the attackers, they all have either very small armies with this much quality, or they have very large armies of virtually no quality. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, this Harad army over here has got 2 units of dismounted Serpent Guard. Now, not the best attacking unit, but they will at least give Harad a bit more dependability in the centre of their army. And then, of course, we have the very powerful and very effective Trollmen of Harad. They're going to be very good at leading the way. And then back here we have a couple of units of Muhad. Well, we have 1 unit of Muhad Berserkers here, 1 unit of Muhad Tribesmen. The Javelins are going to be very useful, particularly against the army I decided to bring. Another unit of Serpent Guard, another unit of Muhad Berserkers, and another unit of Muhad Tribesmen. So he's got this sort of column formation going on behind these siege towers that he's got, and he's also got some Demons of the Desert, and he's got 1 unit of Serpent Bodyguard. So he's got a unit of pretty high tier cav, and he's got very high tier demons. Now, demons in a siege, I would always bring these guys. They're very, very strong indeed. So yeah, he's gone for, as I said, the defenders individually didn't have all that much money, so he's gone for more quality than some of his allies have gone for. Speaking of which, we move on to Joachim, who's playing as Rune, and he has several units of clansmen to sort of bulk out his army a little bit, each of them pushing a siege tower, so he's going to try and get them set up on the walls very quickly. As you can see, they're all spaced out, so he's going to be doing that. Also, he might go for the walls with this catapult, or even better, the towers. The towers, as it stands in Third Age Reforged, in these sort of more standard siege maps, are absolutely lethal. I think they are going to get nerfed, actually, because it means that you really have to have your catapult occupied by that. He's got 2 units of Loknar Rim. Pretty decent standard arch unit. If you can get them set up and firing, they should do a decent job. He's also got some Clan Guard, some Carmel's Chosen, and then several units of Flag Rim. Armour piercing infantry. Very, very effective if they're put up against the right units. Now we shall move on to the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, played by Savage Paradox. He's also got a unit of Cav back here, his Bolgs Champions. It's an interesting choice to bring Cav when you're on the attack in a siege. You can smash through lines, but in a siege like this, the fortress has got some pretty narrow streets, so the likelihood of you being able to get rear charges off is going to be pretty limited, especially seeing as a lot of defenders will always bring pikemen, and wargs are very, very vulnerable to archers, so the towers are going to be doing a lot of damage to them. He's got a lot of heavy goblin infantry. Again, they're pretty well armoured, but they're not going to be much good other than just sort of establishing a position. And then he's got heavy goblin halberdiers, a very good choice. They are armour piercing. Not the best unit in the world, really, but the armour piercing that they deliver is worthwhile. And then back here we have a unit of Black Uruk Warband. Again, not exactly the best unit in the world. Probably similar to the heavy goblin infantry in terms of how effective they are. They do at least look a little better. And then at the front here, he's got several units he's got a couple of units, I think, at least, of heavy goblin crossbowmen. Again, a very good choice, providing you can get them into position within the siege. Again, they're liable to be shot down. A smart defender will always destroy enemy crossbows before they can get set up, because if the attackers can get their crossbows in place, often that will lead to the defender's demise. And then over here he also has a catapult, so he's gone for a little bit more numbers in his army, which is a good move. They do need more in terms of numbers. And then up here we have Spooky Gnome playing as Umbar, of course a very good infantry based faction, so he's got some Corsair Savages. Then back here he's got some Abrazanim Nardubawib, and it's going to be difficult to see some of his units because they're going to be hidden, because I know he's got some Corsair Castamir's Rangers and some Corsair crossbows that are hidden in the trees. He's got some Corsair's Dual Swordsmen. Again, these guys are a very attack minded unit. They're very similar in many ways to the Clan Warriors of Rune, only perhaps a little bit better. Then the Corsair Savages, of course, very, very good on the attack, but against arrows they will get absolutely ripped apart. Belagir Halberds, solid unit. Halberdiers have always been pretty good in this mod. Back there you can see the Harbingers of Castamere. Over here we can see more Abrazanim. Get a bit more of a close-up on these Harbingers because they will be a key unit going forward. They're very, very powerful. And over there we can see more Nardubwib. And then the final attacking army. Again, some of these units that they have are hidden, so I'm not going to be able to see all of their forces. We have Mordor, played by Stewed Fungus. He's got some Mountain Trolls. He's got some Orc Raiders. Again, he looks like he's gone for a bit more numbers in his army, so he's got Uruk Halberds. He's got Orc Fodder as well. They're completely free, so 3 units of fodder come without cost, essentially. He's also got some Scouts, so he's got some lower tier archers, but saving some money. He's also decided to bring cavalry, so that is another interesting little choice that he's made. And then he's also got a Troll Catapult, so going to be much more difficult to skirmish them down. Very understandable. And then at the front over here, we also have some more Orc Fodder. We have some Morgul Chosen. We have some Númenórean Shield Guard, Uruk Bodyguard, and Uruks. We'll talk a little bit more about what he's doing with his army and his approach a little bit more when the battle actually starts. For now, we shall talk about the defenders, and I'm just going to go through the defenders in a blob because we're all kind of mixed together. Playing as Rohan, we have Master Blaster. I have said in the past that Rohan get a bit of an unfair rap for how they do in siege battles. You know, they can be very effective, and in this situation it really rather depends on if you're up against an armoured faction. Harad will do very, very well against Rohan. Rune slightly less so. We have some Yawling Axemen, we have some Riddermark Axemen as well. We also have some Helmingast backed up. No, that is just Helmingast. I thought they were backed up by some Aerid Lancers, but they are not. There's more Riddermark Axemen. Again, there's more Helmingast as well. Good in melee archers, they are. And then we have T-Toxic playing as the High Elves. We've got some Noratirno Warriors mixed in with some Boquindi. There's also some Yawling Axemen. Again, this is a very... They're going to run their troops into position after the deployment, because deploying in streets as narrow as this has always been a nightmare in Medieval 2. Some Sindar Blade Masters are in there. A couple of units of them. There's also some dismounted Aerid Lancers. There's some Riddermark Axemen, more Sword Quindi. Again, that's pretty much it. A lot of these sort of lower tier Elven and Rohirrim units down here. There's also some Linden Longspears. Mithlon Nobles, slightly better. And then over here we have more Mithlon Nobles. Again, I'm sorry if you can hear my mouse wheel. I really do need to get a new mouse. We also have some Noratirno Warriors up on this wall. We have some Smiths of Eregion, a very, very powerful infantry unit, going to be very good against Rune in particular. I've also got some Dunedain Troll Slayers over here. Probably my favourite unit in the mod altogether, all around at the moment. My single favourite unit. I just love the way they look and I love how effective they are at what they do. More Sword Quindi back there, of course. Then as we move into sort of the more central defence, we have some Marshals of the Red. We have some dismounted Royal Guard. And back here, we've got all of our elites pretty much in our town centre. There's also some Imladris Guards. Imladris Guards on the wall. Pikemen on the wall is an interesting one, but I've also got a unit of Arnor Gate Guards, and back here is where all of our elites pretty much are. A couple of units of dismounted Dunedain Knights, some Marshals of the Red, Dunedain Bodyguard, dismounted Royal Guard, some Helmingast, my Trebuchet, and then the Helm Hammers from Rohan. And then down here the rest of my army resides with some Elven backup. A couple of units of Arnorian Heavy Archers, some Arnor Pikemen, a couple of units of Arnor Men-at-Arms. Mostly my army consists of Arnor Pikemen and Arnor Men-at-Arms. There's also some Storm Raiders, some more Imladris Guards, and then some more Arnor Pikemen. That gate is going to be a nightmare to break through with all those pikes. Then some Arnorian Heavy Archers, and then down here I've just got more Arnor Men-at-Arms, and a couple of units of dismounted Arthur Dane Knights as well. So, with that, we shall begin, and starting off actually, I'd like to talk a little bit about how Mordor is approaching this war. And it's partly down to these sort of units he's got pushing the siege tower. You know, the Morgul Chosen and the Númenórean Shield Guard are both pretty effective units. They've both got hit points, they're both very difficult to break down, but they are both spearmen. They are not designed as such to be offensive on the wall units. They will clear a path. Most of my units will not be able to hold them back from establishing a base, but if you're going to do it like this, you really need to back them up very, very quickly, otherwise they're just going to have their hit points bled away for no real purpose. But down here, Rune are going to be the first ones to make their move, and indeed he is going for the towers. It's a very good move. The towers are so lethal. I believe they actually do armor-piercing damage as well. But yeah, these Helmingast are going to do very, very well if they can get clear shots on these clansmen. The clansmen, of course, are not designed for anything other than being cannon fodder. However, the catapult is in range of the archers, and he is actually sort of sending his catapult back. That's actually not necessary, because as soon as they get onto this wall, the archers will be occupied with the clansmen, and even if the clansmen lose, it doesn't really matter. They're going to be occupied, they won't be able to shoot. Again, these towers doing a lot of damage to the clansmen on the approach. We'll keep tabs on that. Up here we can see that Umbar, Spooky Gnome, is moving up his forces. Corsair Savages, much more traditional unit that you expect to see on a siege tower. High attack, going to be able to rip through a unit of archers particularly. in a pretty big hurry. Also, they don't have a lot of armour, so Helmingas won't get their bonus damage down quickly. The Corsair Savages seem to be the meat shield, so to speak. The Balaguer Halberds, unfortunately, are in range of archers. Also, he's got his Abrazanim moving up to try and affect something there. And the Orcs, I believe that they did actually get a good hit on these units over here, and I saw that because they were knocking this wall down, I just retreated off it. I doubted they were going to put a siege tower up there, and also moving in some pikemen to try and block that. It's going to be difficult to sort of try and keep everything under tabs because they're attacking from basically every direction other than the keep. There goes the tower, so Rune's advance is going to be a little bit kinder to them over here, and actually the Rohirrim forces have retreated entirely from the walls. So the clansmen, if the Rohan infantry doesn't advance onto the wall quickly, Rune is actually going to be able to get a bit of a foothold over here. And Rune may have a small army, but it is quite elite, and they will be able to do a decent amount of damage. Now these Sindar Blade Masters will tear through clansmen with impunity. It's not going to be pretty. They aren't anywhere near the top yet. Again, this is really the bombardment phase as well. The frame rate drops every time a wall or a tower starts taking damage. And there goes one. That is over on my front. That is Mordor's catapult forcing their way in. You can see my pikemen scurrying around to get into position. The Noraturno warriors are running off this wall because the Misty Mountains are trying to make some holes, because the Misty Mountains did not bring any siege towers, which I'm quite surprised about. Maybe he thought he could use his allies, which he can. And his allies did bring plenty. Over here you can see the Umbar making their attack. Going to use their ram to get through this gate over here. There are only 2 gates into the settlement. The announcer is going to get rather antagonising in this battle, I can tell already. But yes, these siege towers are going to be reaching our walls without much of a challenge, to be honest with you. I mean, the siege towers, because of how strong the towers are, will actually take damage over the course of the battle. You can see that it took 22 damage on its approach, but it will take quite a while before they are actually destroyed. Now these Arnor men-at-arms are not going to be sufficient to hold back the Mordor forces that are coming. Uruk bodyguards and Numenorean shield guard are far in excess of what Arnor men-at-arms can deal with. I do like the look of the Gondorian architecture in here. Makes a nice change from the standard medieval 2 sieges. And over here, you can see that battle has been met. Frame rate taking a little dip, but it shouldn't get too bad throughout this fight. The clansmen are going to fall with impunity to the Riddermark Axemen, but the Riddermark Axemen will take 1 or 2 more losses than most other units because, of course, they aren't particularly survivable, and also they're much better off backed up by a more survivable unit. So there goes the gate over on my front. The Imladris guards and the Arnor pikemen's pikes are already down. These clansmen need to be backed up very, very quickly if anything is going to be achieved over here from Rohan, and they are in fact trying to destroy a wall by the looks of things that their siege tower is already set up on. Interesting. Now these clansmen over here are surrounded by Riddermark Axemen and Sindar Blade Masters. They are doomed. So yeah, Rune sending forward their lower units first. It is... oof. That frame rate dip whenever the walls start to crumble, and there are multiple openings where that is happening. The game doesn't like dealing with falling polygons. Over here we can see that the Orcs are trying to force their way in through this breach. However, this is only Orc fodder, and Orc fodder will not do too well against Arnor men-at-arms backed up by Arnor pikemen. Frame rate is taking a bit of a turn for the worse over there in that area of the map. I wonder why that is. Interesting. Interesting, I think it might actually be the archers and the concentration of Mordor forces, shall we say. Now back here I was actually targeting them. You can see the burnt bodies in the background there from the trebuchet. And then up here we can see... Now that was a very strange move from Rune, because there were his own men in that siege tower and he destroyed it. But yes, the walls are starting to crumble in several places, and that's good. The attackers need to use their numbers because we have the quality advantage quite significantly. Now these Numenorean shield guard and these Uruk bodyguards are going to be easily enough to deal with these Arnor men-at-arms, and it really does depend how I'm going to deal with this. I sent up another unit of Arnor men-at-arms to try and block these shield guard in. The shield guard won't kill my men quickly, but they will kill them eventually. And I have this unit of dismounted Arthur Day Knights. Now, over here, we can see that because all of Umbar's forces were in loose and they were trying to skirmish down my pipeline, I charged out the gate with the support of a unit of Noraturno warriors from T-Toxic with a unit of Arnor men-at-arms. Going to try and do as much damage as I can. Being aggressive as a defender is always a bit of a gamble, but we'll see if it pays off. going back down to the Rune Harad front, because Harad have also started to make their move. Misty Mountain's still sitting back. Over here we can see that Rune are actually starting to pour in with a few more of their better units, their Loke Flag Rim. The Flag Rim are under significant archer fire from that wall from the Helmingas. However, the Clan Guard and the Flag Rim together should be sufficient to deal with quite a lot of the Rohirrim infantry, not so much the Sindar Blade Masters. Let's have a look over here at what Harad is doing. The frame rate is dipping again, so I assume he's attacking a wall. Oof. How strange. You can see over here that there are Trollmen of Harad. Defeat is a certainty, though, because they are up against Marshals of the Red, and they are boxed in by Noritino warriors. Now, I would actually expect the Trollmen to pull through this fight, but the towers are probably switching it in our favour somewhat. You can see over here that the dismounted Serpent Guard are suffering the same fate, but they are up against Smiths of Eregion. And let's have a look. The Smiths of Eregion, well, there's only 40 of them left, so the Smiths have actually taken quite a lot of damage from Harad. That's not to be taken too surprisingly, though. I mean, there's the potential of javelin fire coming over the walls, and there is also the Trollmen in melee, which will do some damage to the Smiths. But yes, let us leave this part of the battle, for the frame rate does not like it. And go back over to a part of the battle which the frame rate seems to be a little bit more kind on. This front over here, this gate. You can see that I'm continuing to try and push out. The Noritino warriors unfortunately fell by the wayside pretty quickly, which is not to be taken too surprisingly either, because they went out into very attack-minded units and they are quite fragile. Corsairs, Dual Swordsmen and Corsair Savages can be quite efficient when used against units like that. And I am actually going to push out one of my units of Arnor Pikemen as well to try and push them back even further. Again, the forces of Umbar are very well suited to dealing with armoured targets, but I got the feeling that they hadn't pushed up their forces enough to support their lower tier units, and I wanted to kill them off as much as I possibly could. Now up on this wall over here we can see the Númenórean Shield Guard have taken virtually no losses. Númenórean Shield Guard are a unit which will also be made available for Umbar as well as Mordor in the next patch, and as you can see there's also the Black Númenórean armour, the Temple Inquisitor armour just underneath their robes. Yeah, very nice looking unit. Also the Mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, they will be coming to Umbar as well. You can see that they have met up with the Orc Bodyguard, so they have managed to form a pretty decent position here that they could try and take advantage of and try and flood onto the walls. But also over here, the Uruk Bodyguard, I've engaged them with a much more heavy duty unit in the shape of the dismounted Arthur Day Knights. They aren't armour piercing, they have a lot of melee skill. They are quite closely compared. They may as well be called a sort of more heavily armoured variant, but slightly lower skill version of the Sindar Blade Masters. Over here we can see fire arrows coming in from the town centre onto this unit over here, and it's causing the orcs to rout. The Imladris Guards and Storm Raiders that are supporting my defence over here doing very, very good work. But down over here, Rune, and the Misty Mountains are starting to advance. Again, testing the waters with their Mountain Orc Berserkers. Again, they were another unit that were hidden, and they're getting into the side of these Imladris Guards. So the Imladris Guards should start to fall, particularly with the support of these Black Uruk warbands coming in. A little bit more survivability, and in the background you can see the heavy Goblin Crossbowmen. If they get into position, that's bad news bears for us. In fact, the warband is starting to flood in through the city in other ways. Rohan seems to have the defences covered though. These Goblin infantries are just sort of waiting. And Rune, they're going to meet up with Rune, so the Misty Mountains and Rune doing a pretty good job at forcing their way into the settlement. Umbar has been forced outside, but my men are going to take a decent amount of damage in doing that. Over here, this gate remains closed, because I don't think they actually brought a ram. Oh no, they did bring a ram. The Muhad Berserkers are bringing up, and again, you can see they just fall one at a time from the towers. And over here you can see that these are Muhad tribesmen, I believe. Yes, they are. I hope they've used their ammunition, because it's a real waste to send javelins into melee if they haven't used their ammunition. And over here, Harad is starting to clear off this wall. Again, they need to clear off the wall pretty quickly, because these towers are causing ridiculous damage to the elite-focused Haradrim. This is the problem. The towers are so strong that it actually discourages attackers from bringing an elite-focused army. In the background, you can see Muhad tribesmen coming in, following in the Trollmen. The Trollmen trying to hold back a unit of Noritino warriors who are much greater in number than they are. But these Marshals of the Red, they've been forced off a little bit by the Trollmen, and Rohan are starting to pull back, I think, because they run the risk of being surrounded now that Rune is really starting to make their presence felt in the settlement, and the Misty Mountains. Dismounted Arid Lancers pulling back, so for the time being, I mean, the Misty Mountains, those two breaches might turn out to be crucial. And I'm just sort of trying to run my units around again. Arnorian Heavy Archers are mostly out of ammunition at this point. You can see that I've really started to push them back. That's mostly down to these Arthur Dane Knights. The Arthur Dane Knights were really the heroes I needed out here, but they are actually just pushing their way past me with these scouts. You know, I'm liable to get surrounded here if I'm not careful. Again, it was a pretty gutsy move to actually advance out, but I believe actually the Umbar player was the one that timed out, so in the interest of fairness I did want to engage his forces so that it wasn't an too imbalanced of a match. Imbalanced matches can be fun, but only to a point. There goes the other gate, so they now have another way into the settlement. It's getting to the point where we should probably think about falling back. Again, these units out here are not going to be able to fall back. Essentially, I'm going to have to try and duel Umbar to the death out here and hope that Mordor doesn't try and surround me. These scouts are wavering. That was an artillery shot coming from somewhere. As you can see over here, I've got another unit of Arnor men-at-arms up on this wall. I managed to defeat a unit of push back a unit of Orc Raiders, which is now trying to get in and around here, and it's going to try and surround the pikemen over here. Of course, the pikemen still holding very, very strong at this choke point. Really, the Orcs don't stand a chance. You can see all of those towers. That is the siege tower that died. Of course, the towers, very, very strong in this mod, as I said. If you're going to do a siege on a standard map, the biggest bit of advice I can give to you if you're the attackers is use your catapult ammunition, even if it's all of it, to destroy the towers, because they will destroy your lives. And over here, these Noratirno warriors are not going to be able to hold back the superior numbers of these Black Uruk warbands. So they are actually, you know, they could cut off my forces, but then my forces are just going to fight and die out there. I do have my elites further back in the castle. Out here, Rohan has got their axemen and their spears, and the elves are starting to pull back what they can as well. Linden long spears. Back over here, we can see Riddermark axemen. They're lagging behind a little bit. There's a lot of red on the radar now within the settlement. And down here, we can see just basic units of Quindi and Riddermark axemen. They aren't going to be well. The Riddermark axemen are armor piercing. We'll see. I mean, I would still back the Flagrim, Clan Guard, and what are they? Are they Goblin infantry? Yes, but there is a lot of them. I would still back them to win this fight, to be honest with you. I mean, Riddermark axemen are not durable. And Sword Quindi have little in the way of armour, which is actually a good thing against the Flagrim. I'm not sure. You can actually see out here, was this a unit of Sindar Blade Masters that came out here? It was. So the Sindar Blade Masters tried to take on the Carmel's Chosen in the field, and unfortunately were cut down. The Carmel's Chosen are a truly scary infantry unit once they get going. And up here you can see Rune squashing the Yawling Axemen and Helmingas on the wall, and the rest of the Misty Mountain Force, including the vast majority of their halberdiers, going to be advancing. Down here we can see the surrounded Imladris Guards and Storm Raiders. Defeat seems certain for them now. The heavy Goblin infantry, a little bit more armoured. The pikes aren't going to be able to do quite the same amount of damage to them, and there are also halberdiers. And there are also arrows streaking into them. And there's also a unit of routing scouts that are going to sort of disrupt their formation a little bit. Now over here you can see this was a bit of a misclick from me. My Arthur Dane Knights, I don't know what they were doing, but they decided to go and charge into the Misty Mountains. They will be charged into oblivion by Boggs champions very quickly, which is a shame, because with a unit of dismounted Arthur Dane Knights I could pretty much wrap up Umbar at this point in time. This pikeman and these men-at-arms have done a superb job at dealing with all of their units that were in loose formation. Again, pikemen are no joke. The best way to deal with pikemen is to either force your way through them or flank them. Trying to take them on from the front, attrition-based warfare, terrible, terrible idea. Up here on the wall, these Uruk Bodyguard, you can see that these Uruk Bodyguard and these dismounted Arthur Dane Knights are fighting each other into a standstill, but it's actually looking like, because of the slight damage the Uruk Bodyguard took from the Arnor men-at-arms initially, the Arthur Dane Knights are going to be victorious, and it just goes to show that hit points aren't everything. Unfortunately, however, they are now being reinforced by the Morgul Chosen, which should swing the balance of power on this war back against me. And I'm sure you noticed down here the Trolls. The Trolls, unlike in Vanilla, are actually a very good way at dealing with pikes, because you can force them out of position and smash them up and then sort of reinforce the position with your infantry. So the Mountain Trolls will actually do very, very well against my Arnor pikemen. And this is going to go very poorly. So they are going to start to flood in. Although Mordor's army has taken a lot of losses, you can see it back there. There's some mounted Númenórean shield guard. There's still some scouts, and they still have their catapult out there, their troll catapult. Artillery could be just what they need, because again, you can crash your way through this wall, open up another avenue of attack. Let's have a look what Harad are doing. Looks like Harad have all but secured their part of the city. Let's see what they've got left. So down here we can see some Demons of the Desert. They've taken a few losses from the towers. Again, this is what I would say the towers definitely need a nerf. They are far, far, far too strong. You know, you shouldn't be expected to have to destroy every single tower to stand a chance in a siege, because it takes away from a lot of the fun, in a way. Like, I feel like if you're playing as the Orcs, certainly you should be allowed to just sort of attack the walls immediately. You shouldn't have to wait in a bombardment phase. The bombardment phase has always been the most boring part of a siege, because, you know, you might as well just have started without the towers and artillery entirely and just gotten on with the main event, so to speak. But yes, Harad are victorious, but it has cost them dearly. The Demons of the Desert could still be what they need, though. The heroes that they need, because they are going to have to deal with all of our most elite units. And it does look like a big blob of blue that we've got, but it honestly, the units we have aren't all that great in number. We are ahead, but we're not ahead by that much. I mean, 12% in a siege, it's not that great. So we shall see. You can see the pikemen and the storm raiders are still holding over here, and in fact it looks like they've actually managed to pull it back a little bit. Storm raiders in particular. Storm raiders are going to be receiving a bit of a buff in the next patch, I believe, to make them a little bit more their own thing. And over here we can see that I'm still forcing Umbar's units back. I'm being charged now by the Numenorian Shield Guard, but fortunately, because of the presence of these pikemen, it's not going to make too much of a difference. In fact, I might get a bit of a cheeky screenshot there. Screenshots of pikes are always the best. And over here we can see Serpent Bodyguards that are going to slam into the back of these men. And again, unfortunately at the back it's mostly Arnor men-at-arms, so it should actually be pretty effective. And there's also the Bolgs champions with their goofy little long-range sprite models you can see in the distance. That was not a good charge at all. They never got up to charge speed. How interesting. They didn't even get their lances down. That's kind of strange. The Bolgs champions, let's see how they do. Taking it in turns to charge into the back of my men. They are turned around, but it isn't going to make a slight bit of difference. That's not exactly charge speed either. How strange. Well, that was certainly odd. As long as they don't touch the pikes, they'll be fine. Mordor is filtering his way into the settlement. Let's have a look. I've still got Arthur Dane Knights up here, and I'm now backing them up with a unit of Arnorian heavy archers, so I'm not letting Mordor have any sort of purchase into the settlement, although several of my units are now routing, and there's a big blob of Mordor right there, including halberdiers, which will be sufficient to finish me off. And as you can see, the Misty Mountains still has a good portion of their army left. Heavy Goblin halberdiers, you know, T-Toxic is going to try and get his units out of there, but he hasn't got very many places to go. I mean, he needs to hurry up because those Bolgs champions are coming for him. Admittedly, those units do include pikemen, so we shall see. Some Black Uruk warband waiting there. And as you can see, one of my units of Troll Slayers, which we didn't actually get to see firing earlier on. I'm pretty disappointed because I forgot to move them, honestly, from the front with Harad, and they used up all their ammo on fire at will on something which I never actually noticed what. But my other unit of Troll Slayers still has their ammunition. It's only this one that is expended. And one of the reasons I love the Troll Slayers is because of their effectiveness in melee. Their armor-piercing axes that they pull out in melee. Now, Arnor's weakness overall is their armor-piercing in melee. The only two units they have that are armor-piercing in melee, I believe, are their Dunedain Troll Slayers and their Dunedain Bodyguards. So archers are the only thing they have that are AP in melee, and that's their primary weakness. You know, they're pretty much the all-rounders of the Kingdoms of Men in every way other than that. That is their one notable loss. Obviously, as well, they're very good at stuff, but they aren't the best at cavalry. And again, archers, I think they are actually the best at being humanity's best archers, although that might change in the next patch. I don't know how much Dale is going to be moved up. We shall see. But primarily, archers are always going to be Arnor's strong point. And you know, they have good infantry and good cavalry. It's not the best, but it's still very, very serviceable. Rather like Rune, similar, and now I'm also pulling back because they were getting shot in the back by heavy goblin crossbowmen, and I'm now actually focusing them down, I believe, with my Dunedain Troll Slayers. Now, the best way to look at Dunedain Troll Slayers is, at range anyway, it's like their javelins with long range but less ammunition. They do a ton of damage. The arrow weight is significant. Again, it's only them and the Dale Dragon Slayers which have differing arrow weights at the moment. And it's likely to remain similar to that. I can't imagine too many archers will get like heavy arrows which cause them to do a lot more damage. And we are actually pushing out. We decide, you know what, we're not going to let them group up over here and try and overwhelm us. We're actually going to try and pick them off one by one. So we're going to try and deal with Rune and Harad quickly, and then form a front line against the Misty Mountains, Mordor, and what's left of Umbar. We shall see how well that goes. Again, these Riddermark Axemen ripping their way through Black Uruk Warband again. Rohan are going to do very well against the Misty Mountains because what little survivability they have is entirely due to their armour. My Troll Slayers as well. Again, I love the Troll Slayers. They are my favourite unit overall just because of how good they are in melee. They only have enough ammunition to really ruin one unit's day, but that's still significant if you pick the right unit. And then their choice of melee weapon is also a personal favourite of mine. A nice battle axe. Yeah. Destroying the crossbowman. Rune are setting up a position over here. With their archers. The Narim are decent archers as well. Like, they aren't the highest tier archers, but you can't underestimate them. Back in vanilla, of course, they were Rune's finest archers. There goes the Misty Mountains general. You can see that he charged right into the Imladris guards. Front on as well. That's suicidal for a cav unit. Pikes will destroy your army very, very quickly. These Serpent bodyguards getting their way into the settlement. But again, these Misty Mountains units, again, defeat still seems certain. Again, the Imladris guards, as I've said before, when I pick my units, I tend to pick the Smiths of Eregion and the Noldor Elders before the Imladris guards. But in terms of what they're good at, the Imladris guards really can't be equal. The Arnor Gate guards, maybe. But I'm not so sure about even that, to be honest with you. The Storm Raiders in this mess as well are also effective against cavalry, so that can't have helped matters. Let's have a look out over here. Again, my forces are starting to look a bit thin on the ground. In fact, do I even have any forces? I do, actually. I still have my pikes, obviously because the cavalry cannot charge into the pikes, and they're going toe-to-toe with a unit of Belagir halberds. The halberds should actually do a decent job against my pikes, simply because my pikes rely on their armour. Let's head back into the heart of the settlement, where the battle is being joined. I'm charging my Dunedain Troll Slayers in, making sure Misty Mountains can't get too much purchase in the settlement. And in melee, heavy Goblin Infantry is exactly the sort of thing they like to face, like I said. They do have decent survivability for what they are, but that's based entirely on their armour, and Dunedain Troll Slayers eat armoured units for breakfast. The Dunedain Troll Slayers' weakness is the fact that they aren't very heavily armoured themselves, so in a skirmish fight they will generally lose to a high tier archer, or to overwhelming force like the likes of which Mordor can deploy with their Morannon bows and their Uruk archers, but for the time being. Now there goes the High Elven General. You can see that's over by the choke point that Mordor is still trying to take. But of course it won't really matter too much. We have infinite morale because of the town centre, and the High Elves have very high morale anyway. We can see that Rohan charging forward with his Riddermark Axemen into this runic line. Again, they do have armour-piercing damage, but the Flagrim, and in particular the Cardinal's Chosen, are far too good for the Riddermark Axemen to survive on their own. So we're going to need to get some support in for them. Unfortunately, I have just the thing. When it comes to survivable units, there's not much better than the dismounted Dunedain Knights, so I'm going to charge them forward. They're not armour-piercing, so they do their killing very slowly. But the ultimate in tanks. They tank the damage. You know, very much a personification of Arnor in many ways in melee. They and the Knights of Enumenos don't mess around, and over here we can see that I'm sending out my Arnor Gate Guards, the other Uber Pike unit in addition to the Imladris Guards. So really cavalry in general was not a good choice for the attackers, because when you're facing the High Elves and Arnor, there's always the possibility of these super tier Pike units. And as you can see from the fate of the Misty Mountains General, they are very, very effective. In fact, I think it's not too spoilery to say, I think this unit of Imladris Guards that was holding back the Misty Mountains got 800 kills. 800 on a unit of pikemen. That's how good they are. That was the single strongest unit in terms of kills on the battlefield. And of course we won't be able to actually see their statistics, we will only be able to see mine. But yeah, Imladris Guards, I mean, if you're defending in a siege, it might be worth getting them. And over here you can still see that I'm actually forcing them back. The Morgul Chosen have been defeated. And again, these Numenor and Shield Guard trying to... Again, a lot of this is down to the towers, I think, because of how overpowered they are. Wretchedly so. But just the fact that a unit of dismounted Arthedain Knights was able to withstand Morgul Chosen, Uruk Bodyguard, and dismounted Numenorian Shield Guard just goes to show what a decent unit they are. I mean, Arnor does lack shock infantry units, like dedicated shock infantry units mostly, in terms of like armour piercing, but the Arthedain Knights, very, very good. I mean, a lot of people might prefer the battle-ready Dunedain because of the extra hit points, but the Arthedain Knights are worth it, and also more stylish in my opinion. The knightly armour. In fact, were Mordor defeated here? I think they were. I think this unit of Imladris Guards was victorious. So Mordor have essentially been stonewalled. Madness. As you can see, my pikemen were eventually destroyed by the Belagir halberds. Not too surprising, but the attack was largely a success because it forced Umbar to... Well, Umbar essentially have been stopped. You can see over here that my Troll Slayers, backed up by the Aerid Lancers and the Arnor Gate Guards, are going to... Well, there goes Mordor's general. Or is that the Misty Mountains general? It was the Misty Mountains general, I believe, actually. It was amongst the Misty Mountains troops. No, the Misty Mountains general already died, so yes, it must have been the Mordor general. His shield guard charged into the back of pikes again. Don't charge into the back of pikes. You might think it's a good idea, but they turn on a dime, and they will cut your cavalry down very, very easily. These heavy goblin halberds should finally be enough to destroy this high elven force. And in the background over there, you can see routing Arnor pikeman. Misty Mountain still has a decent amount of forces left, though. I mean, the balance of power is starting to shift against our enemies. Again, the balance of power is actually slightly in favour of the enemies at the very start. I'm not sure where that is. I believe that was the Harad general. Yeah, the balance of power was slightly in favour of the enemies to start with, but I think the staggered nature of their attack, in addition to the fact that we were very aggressive in points and didn't allow the 5 armies to essentially meet up and try and smash through us with all their numbers, I think that's what's swinging this battle heavily into our favour. Because, I mean, we're just pouring out now. We're not going to defend the final layer. We're just going to attack with everything we have. The Helm Hammers are being released. The Royal Guard are being released. Over here, you can see that all the Helmingas are backing up the Riddermark Axemen and the dismounted Dunedain Knights. The dismounted Dunedain Knights traditionally won't do very well against runic units like the Carmel's Chosen because of the armour piercing. But with all of this backup, the numbers advantage is now ours. Unfortunately, there is still Nar Rim firing, but we can deal with them. My Dunedain bodyguard have been firing back at them, I believe. And over here we can see the mass rout from the Misty Mountains. Again, I really don't know which is the better looking pike unit, the Imladris Guards or the Arnor Gate Guards. If anyone has an opinion on that, let me know, because I'm struggling to make up my mind. I'm beginning to think that Arnor might be my favourite faction overall, though. Again, with the rebalancing that's coming along soon, that might change. But in 0.91, I believe that my favourite faction are Arnor. A lot of that has, you know, again, the fact that they're allowed 2 Knights of Illuminati with how strong they are is a little bit overpowered. And I believe that is being changed, but again, I like having an archer-heavy force, because it panics your opponent a lot. Especially one as good as Arnor's, and unlike the elves, you often have the numbers to actually cover all your bases, whereas with the elves you often have to make sacrifices, especially with the high elves. Maybe a little bit less so with Lothlorien. But yeah, the Misty Mountains are running low on troops, and look at that, a slew of our forces counter-attacking and forcing them out of the settlement. There goes the Runic General at the hands of the Dunedain Knights. Absolutely stonewalled. You can see over here that there is still Misty Mountains forces. Finally, the Imladris Storm Raiders and Guards have been dealt with. The Troll Catapult is making its move. But over here there's nothing left of Mordor other than the Troll Catapult. We can see the victorious dismounted Arthurdane Knights and Arnorian Heavy Archers. There aren't many of them left, but they are victorious. I was very impressed with them. They were the unit that surprised me the most in this battle with how much of a heavy task they took on and managed to be successful. Over here we can see my general. The Dunedain Bodyguard, the other armour-piercing unit, they have great swords, however. Or long swords, I guess. They're not fat enough to be great swords, I suppose. But yeah, to give them their proper name, the Dunedain Steel Bowmen. Not quite as wretchedly overpowered as they once were, but still not bad at all. You can see all of the Rohirrim shields. I do like the Helmingas for that. There are also some shield maidens, I think, in amongst this. Yes, there are. They've already expended their ammunition, but here we can see that it's getting to the point now where it's actually Nar Rim that are holding back the tide. So the Misty Mountains and Rune are starting to break. There are still Harad forces, amazingly. These Muhar Tribesmen might be... Oof. These Muhar Tribesmen might be able to get a bit of damage done, but... In fact, over here we can see that the Haradrim General, I believe, the Serpent Bodyguard, there is actually a new model coming for the Serpent Bodyguard, I believe, and it looks amazing. A lot of the units are going to be updated in terms of the models, so it's going to look even better than it does at the moment. And honestly, I think the Serpent Bodyguard, the upgraded version of them, is one of the best looking models so far. The Brotherhood units for Khand are also getting a makeover, making them look even better than they do. It's going to be great. Can't wait for the new models. Again, these Serpent Bodyguard, unfortunately they got caught on the catapult rather, and then in sustained melee the Dunedain Bodyguard are going to rip them asunder. Still a little way to go in this battle, but at this point it's fairly obvious the balance of power, our elite units, we are going to be victorious. And again, we kept the enemies away from each other. I do think that maybe the enemies should have had a little bit more money so that they could have had a bit more in terms of their armies. But not much. It wasn't to this point. Like, it wasn't supposed to be a slaughter like this, and I think that this thing that swung it again was the fact they staggered their attack and they weren't able to meet up and use their superior numbers. We kept them isolated, and that's the way to do it if you're facing a numerically superior force with a force of greater quality. And over here you can see that my dismounted Arthedain Knights managed to recharge these troll catapults, trying to get as much damage done to them as possible. They should still lose to a troll catapult because they are pretty beaten up, but still, these trolls will be made to pay for it. And in fact, there is actually a few units of Imladris guards over there, which should actually be enough to finish off these trolls. So the catapult is going to be denied to them as well. Heartbreaking for them, especially when you consider that this is a nice big blob they could have got a few shots off into, but these heavy goblin halberds are not going to hold for long. Again, the sheer mass of the Helmhammers carrying this line forward. The Helmhammers are such a heavy duty unit. They don't take no prisoners. These Marshals of the Red going out to wrap up the catapult crew. There's also my Troll Slayers in there as well. You can see that my Dunedain Bodyguard, they're going to go around, try and flank Rune, finish them off. In fact, let's go and have a look out here, because I believe there was a fight we kind of missed. Yes, there was. There was actually one of my units of Troll Slayers actually got sandwiched between Demons of the Desert and Serpent Bodyguard before they came in, and they were pretty much killed immediately. But there are still Demons of the Desert running around, I believe. Not very many of them, to be fair. Ugh, there's a lot of friendly fire in there. Not that it matters at this point. For victory seems certain. At least let's have a look. No, victory is only a distinct possibility at this point. Not seems certain, only a fool could throw away this opportunity. Over here we can see some Sword Quindy. Let's see where my Steel Bowmen are. Well, this poor unit of Goblin Infantry, who was hoping they would be able to flee the fight without taking any further casualties, is sorely mistaken. Routing on impact with the Dunedain Bodyguard. A player did admit defeat. I believe that was Savage... No, it wasn't Savage Paradox. He's still got some units fighting. I believe it was the Harad player. Or maybe the Mordor player even. Yeah, it would have been the Mordor player, wouldn't it? Here's Savage Paradox. Still got some crossbowmen. They haven't pulled out their melee weapons yet either, so they do still have some ammunition. They're getting into firing position. I think they noticed that the death that is coming for them. Will they get a volley off? That is the question. Dunedain Bodyguard, they're not elf fast, but they are still pretty quick. They're not going to get a volley off. They've given up. Despair has overtaken them. Oof. Again, I like the Steel Bowman helmets. I like the fact they look like an even more elite version of the battle-ready Dunedain with a bow. Now let's head back over here. You can see the carnage that took place back here. The Runic Archers, no match for the Dunedain Bodyguard and the Catapult in a skirmish fight. And over here, the Nar Rim actually have held for a surprisingly long time. Again, this is largely due to the fact that the Dunedain Knights, again, not based around their killing power. They are all about defense. You can see the Shield Maidens are starting to throw a few axes in. The axe throwers, of course, have a better firing arc than javelins, so they are able to do this. Over here we can see, what is this? I thought there was a fight going on over here, but it turns out there isn't. Let's go and see. Is there anything left of Savage Paradox's army at all? No, there is not, in fact. So yes, now all that remains over here is to pour out and deal with the AFK players' forces again. This was likely something which had a pretty big impact as well, because he left at some point in the match. I'm not sure whether he rage quit or not. I mean, it was very early for a rage quit. Like, you have to expect a few losses on the way to the wall and setting up, so it's kind of strange. But we did charge out and meet his forces anyway, and took some losses of our own, so it probably wasn't enough to significantly balance it out, but even so. You know, the likes of Balagir Halberds, the Harbingers of Castamere, and particularly the Corsair crossbows he's got hidden would have been very, very useful. The Umbar Catapult crew looks very similar to the Haradrim one, being cut down by Sindar Blade Masters and Sword Quindy. Let's go and see the demise of Rune, shall we? Someone has admitted defeat. Again, these Dunedain bodyguard dealing with the catapult crew. I'll give credit to Joe Jim, he never gave up. He committed everything he had.
The enemy army flees the field. Pursue and run them down.
The enemy army flees the field. Indeed. I like it. I like to do like matches like this on like standard fortresses and citadels though, because it's very reminiscent of medieval too. And also they do tend to be, at least in terms of the maps themselves, rather balanced, apart from the towers. That's the one thing I would say. In fact, it might even be a good idea to do a super outnumbered siege at some point. We'll see how that goes. Maybe do a castle and do a 2v6. 6 armies of total trash against 2 armies of heightened quality. That's an idea. Hopefully we'll do that in the near future. Again, these Dunedain bodyguard surrounding what's little is left. I mean, they did have Dragon's Wrath crossbowman as well. The carnage they could have caused if they'd used the fireball. So again, I do think that maybe if I gave the attackers about 2,000 more florins, it would have been a balanced match. Again, we ended up slaughtering them a little bit. But that was partly down to our tactics as well, I think. The way we kept them apart from each other is exactly the sort of thing you need to do in a siege to have a lot of success. And over here we can see these Belagear halberds are routing. This fight is too much for them at this point. Dunedain Troll Slayers. Certainly been my MVP. As you can see, that Arthur Dane Knight, he's not had the best day. He's blind and yet he still fights. Using replicas of Narsil. There's some Linden Longspears as well. Like, the Linden Longspears are not one of my favourite units at all. One of my least favourite units in the game. Like, as pikes, they're so lightweight. And I've never really found them to be any good at all, other than being cheap and filling out your elven army and sort of slightly dissuading cavalry. But even then, I mean, I've seen wargs charge them from the front in spear wall and just completely crush them. Wargs being less elite, of course. Over here we can see Harbingers of Castamere. Noratirno warriors will very quickly find themselves losing to a unit of Harbingers. We shall see. In fact, we might as well speed up, because at this point it's just a matter of trying to run Umbar down. Well, we will drop it down to 2 times 2. Helmingast as well. We need to send in a unit of quality over here, really. But we shall see what's going on over here. Ah, yes. Castamere's Rangers. I decided to finish them off with my Dunedain Troll Slayers. I'm also going to get into them with what's left of my dismounted Arthur Dane Knights. Clean-up duty. Running down the enemy. It's like a campaign match all of a sudden. Speaking of campaign matches, Warhammer 2 comes out soon, and I've never been the biggest fan of Total War campaigns, to be honest with you. I've never really gotten on with them, other than in Warhammer. I think it's the one Total War game where the multiplayer I've not been too crazy about, but the single player I found to be very entertaining. I might do a little something on Warhammer 2's release. Again, I have posted a couple of Warhammer battles in the past, but they've only been basic things. And again, I know a lot of, like, many people aren't really the biggest fan of it, and I do echo those statements, rather, in terms of the mechanics of how it actually works. It does do a lot of things very well, actually, especially seeing as, well, maybe a bit less so on release, but considering things, I think the balance of how things work in Warhammer is actually kind of interesting and kind of well done. It's really just the mechanics of how the battles play out, namely that they are far, far too fast. There are ways to slightly mitigate that with custom maps, but even then, the way that vampires can raise zombies in behind your lines, the ways that flying units can just bypass your defences entirely, there's nothing wrong with it per se. I just don't know. There's also the fact that it's one of the newer Total War games, so it's rather more demanding, but again, I do prefer Third Age Reforged in those terms. Again, I understand that not everyone has got time for a 2-hour monster siege like Third Age often ends up providing, but a bit of a middle ground would be nice. I mean, I prefer 2 hours to 2 minutes. Over here, getting right up into the face of this fight, the Harbingers of Castamere, surrounded by Marshals of the Red, Dismounted Royal Guard, Arnold Gate Guards. The Harbingers of Castamere, very, very tough unit, but not quite this tough. They are not quite going to have the skill to murder their way out of this situation. Again, I think the time has come for times 6 speed, because there is actually a unit of Corsair crossbowmen somewhere around here. Let's see if we can find their name label. Crossbows. Blech, doesn't matter. Where are those harbingers? Let's go back over there. Oh, they are very dead. My Dunedain Troll Slayers. Oh, there they go. Now we just need to find the crossbow corsairs. The crossbow corsairs, very, very damaging. Again, it's a bit of a shame they didn't get utilised in the battle. Very much the ultimate in being a glass cannon. With their harpoon launchers more than... In fact, let's see if we can get... Well, actually, they're going to get their melee weapons out very quickly, aren't they? Well, we can see them just there. And that's actually really cool. They use their crossbow bolts as their melee weapons because they're sort of big and harpoony. I've never noticed that before. That's really cool. But yes, certainly something. Just before we go through the stats, though, what I was going to say about the crossbow corsairs is a common, well, not a common tactic, but one of the things that a lot of Umbar players do like to do is hide their crossbow corsairs in the corner, and then when the enemy has utilised all their skirmish ammunition, bring them out of hiding, and then in the late game a unit of crossbow corsairs is going to be very, very sufficient to deal with the enemy. But as you can see, you know, the Umbar player left early, so he didn't really count, but the Harad player didn't bring a big enough army for this sort of situation. The elite forces were cut down by the towers. If you're going to bring an elite army, you need to have some way of defusing the towers, at least in part, before advancing. The Misty Mountains, of course, were up against the ridiculously strong Imladris guards. Rune did pretty well. Again, he was engaged with a lot of Rohan's infantry, which is not quite as good. Again, Rohan got noticeably less kills in this situation, so Arnor and the High Elves loved this situation. Rohan, it didn't bring any cav, which he could have used to sort of run down some units outside, which would have been interesting to see. And Mordor did pretty well as well. I mean, eventually he did manage to break through, but it was at the cost of his entire army. As we can see, Troll Slayers 558 kills. That was by far the highest I got. A unit of Arnor Pikemen 347. I think that was on the Mordor blob of fodder. And looking throughout here again, dismounted Arthedain Knights getting over 200 kills each. Very, very strong. And seeing as I mismicroed one of them and the Bolg's champions charged them to death, not bad at all. And again, even Arnor Men-at-Arms are going to be good against fodder tier units. So yeah, maybe I could have given the attackers a bit more money, but I do think that considering the balance of power at the start and everything, and considering we were actually very outnumbered at the start, we do deserve a little bit of credit, I think, for the fact that we were able to keep the enemy armies from meeting up and managing to hold the key points. I do think it was kind of strange that not all of the enemy armies brought artillery and siege towers as well, but no matter. That was a fortress siege here in Athelion, with Arnor, High Elves and Rohan being victorious against the evil that surrounded them. So again, this is a little bit more of a light map than the previous one that I did for my 1000 sub special, but we are actually going to, well, there is actually a revisiting of that map, which I could do at some point, but I want to save that for sometime later. I don't want to do those two in quick succession of one another, but yes, hopefully I will do a few more themed maps in the future as well. Hopefully I want to do Goblin Town, actually. Goblin Town's an interesting kind of map with how the outside can be used for cavalry and the interior is a bit more of an infantry and skirmish based fight. But yeah, we'll see what happens next, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.